Dame is not coming back this year now.
Dame is not coming back at all.
I don't know if that's true necessarily, but
I don't think so. I think this summer he's gone.
Sean Highkin is all over the Portland beat right now, and he said Dame is on board with all of this. Like it makes sense with Dame hurt for the Blazers to try to lose this year and, juice their ping pong ball odds, and like maybe they get, one of
he was all in on it last summer too. And how many upgrades did they make?
We do have a trade to discuss. This happened on Friday between the Portland Trail Blazers and Los Angeles Clippers. The Trailblazers sent out Norman Powell and Robert Covington, and they received back Eric Bledsoe, Justise Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second-round pick.
I'm just getting ready. I'm aligning my seat here. Yep.
Yes. Rub your hands together and let me know what you think of this trade. We have to just start from the Portland side.
All right, look. So Portland had an idea coming into this trade. They wanted to save money. They wanted to get under the tax. Mission accomplished.
Which they did.
Which they did. So I guess that's good. But you know what? When you give up that amount of talent and get so little in return, I don't care if your mission is all about getting under the tax. That is a complete declaration of I give up. That is like, I am not going to be competitive this year. I'm not going to be necessarily as competitive next year because you just gave up. You just relinquished a tremendous amount of talent. How are you going to recoup that next year? Are your $860K in savings because you're now $860K below the luxury tax line? Is that going to be enough for you to go out and somehow reacquire a player of Norman Powell, especially caliber? No, it's not. And for me, it's like, yeah, we can sit here and analyze, they got under the tax, the mission accomplished, that's good. No, that's not how you do business. If you're in the business of keeping around Damian Lillard and building around him, you cannot afford to give up this kind of package. Additionally, and this is my major gripe, if you have this amount of talent that you're willing to shell out, why don't you get draft picks in return? You got a second rounder, okay, big whoop. Draft picks don't count on the cap sheet. And they traded with the Los Angeles Clippers, who had virtually no pick because they sent every pick under the sun plus SGA to the OKC for Paul George back in the day. So I refuse to believe this was the best deal out there in terms of draft compensation. Like maybe they believe in Keon Johnson that much, which fine. Good for you. I think Keon Johnson has potential. Absolutely. I am a believer in Keon Johnson. Do I believe he's going to automatically be better than Norman Powell? Not necessarily. Do I believe he's going to be somewhat equal, maybe even slightly better than Robert Covington? Prime Covington? No. Current Covington? Probably. But that's not saying much. I am very, very disappointed in what they gave up. Or what they got in return, rather. The no draft pick compensation outside of a measly second rounder, that's horrid. That's horrid. Yeah. If you are trying to actually, how do I say it? I'm so upset. If you're trying to get some sort of value in, you do it through draft picks. That's how you do it. It functions as a currency in the NBA. Draft picks is a currency. It's a measure to help align value. This was such a lopsided trade from a value perspective that I'm not going to sit here and clap in my hands for Portland to fall under the luxury tax because I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, that was their clear motivation. We mentioned them in last episode when we were talking about sellers. We brought up at the end, there are going to be teams that try to duck the tax. We said them, Boston, and we brought up Philly before all this Harden stuff came out because those are the three teams that were, I think within 10 million, 15 million of the tax. Like those are the teams within striking distance you could make a reasonable deal and get under. Portland, as you said, mission accomplished there. But yeah, I'm with you. I just can't fathom that is the most they could have gotten for Norman Powell in particular. Like Covington's a expiring contract, so I get it. He's not going to have a ton of value. Like he would be helpful to a contender. You get his bird rights, that's great. But like, I don't think it would have been reasonable to expect the first round pick back for him. Powell in the first year of a 5-year, $90 million deal, I want to say, like, pretty reasonable value. Yeah, pretty reasonable value. You've got him locked up long term. It's just mind blowing that you have very little to show for it in terms of positive value long term, unless Keon Johnson turns into something, and that's what they're going to have to hope for. Like, I get the value, you know, like Joe Cronin came out afterward and said, like, hey, well, now we have cap space this summer, but you don't. Like, you have enough. Yeah. You have enough room to use your non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Okay, cool. What's that? Like, that's not going to meaningfully change your trajectory at all. I understand wanting to trade Powell because you have Dame and CJ and Simons you want to re-sign, and he's up for a big contract, and you don't want to spend, you know, an entire salary cap's worth of space just on a backcourt. Like, that makes sense. You're trying to reallocate assets to other parts of your team. I get it. But as you said, like, try to get in more draft picks or more prospects with a higher upside than, you know, Keon Johnson, who was the number 21 overall pick this past year. Like, it just feels like they really lost a lot, don't have much to show for it, don't have a way to recoup that in free agency or the draft now. Like, sure, they'll be worse this year because of this trade, and maybe that helps them. You know, like, Dame is not coming back this year now. Dame is
not coming back at all.
I don't know if that's true necessarily, but like,
I don't think so. I think this summer he's gone.
Like, Sean Highkin is all over the Portland beat right now, and he said Dame is on board with all of this. Like, it makes sense with Dame hurt for the Blazers to try to lose this year and, you know, juice their ping pong ball odds, and like, maybe they get, you know, one of
he was all in on it last summer too. And how many upgrades did they make?
Yeah, no,
he came in and said, I'm with this, and then after he saw what they did during summer, he was like, I'm not with this.
Right. I think if they get one of the top 3 picks, and whether they keep that or trade that, that might make him change his mind.
All right.
But otherwise, this season should be a wake-up call that they've made too many mistakes, and this counts as a mistake. And you just, like, you are too far removed from building a contender around Damian Lillard to reasonably expect that you can do so moving forward.
And you know what's also a mistake? Not trading Dame last year.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote an entire thing at Fansided saying, like, last summer was the time to trade him because you have all of these guys on expiring. You can get a full year of them. Like, that would have been the right time to do it.
Yep.
But they ignored it. And like, I get it from Portland's perspective because of what Dame has meant to that franchise. Like, they are not going to trade him until he comes there and says, I want out. And I understand that.
And that's fine, but then at least try to build something around it. Like, look, here's the thing. I don't care if Dame is on board with this, because what he's being promised right now is this is going to lead to something. Okay. Right. But this is still a tremendous waste of talent right out the window. Yeah. Like, I understand that you could have ducking the tax is important, yada, yada, yada. But if we're talking about simply a roster construction and talking about building a contender next to Dame, then you hang on to Norman Powell and trade him in the freaking summer when more teams have maneuverability. Like, there was no... And you also made this trade almost a week before the trade deadline. This was the best you could have done? Are you telling me that you couldn't have dangled Norman Powell and in a couple of hours until the trade deadline, someone was like, oh yeah, you know what? Here's a 28-year-old who's actually averaging 19 points per game and is a two-way player, and he's kind of an elite three-point shooter as well. Oh yeah, you know what? He's come for cheap. I would take it. Like, that's... How can you not expect teams to be interested in this guy? And I'm not saying that Portland didn't call around the league. I'm sure they did. But there's a difference in calling around the league and working the phones over the past couple months and going up to the trade deadline a week before and saying, oh, we've exhausted every option or possibility. Look, if the trade isn't there, if the value, the return isn't there, keep his ass. Keep it.
Right.
Like, you're under no pressure to, well, you were if you're management, because ownership comes say, yo, we want to get under the tax. But like, if
you speaking
strictly...
Dump Covington. Like, you didn't have to trade Norman Powell. And if you're worried about re-signing Simons this summer, trade Powell this summer. See what, like, I almost want to give this an incomplete rather than just like an F minus because we don't know what's happening between now and Thursday. And like, I think they're going to trade CJ McCollum too, or at least they're going to strongly consider doing so either now or this summer. It really
I'm hearing like Cleveland. What about you?
Oh, okay. I mean, the Pelicans have been the team I've seen most linked to them. Yeah. But again, if it's like, I think we discussed this last episode, if it's Josh Hart and Satoransky and Jackson Hayes, like, okay. I mean, Josh Hart's good, but he's on a non-guaranteed contract for next year. So are you acquiring him to keep him around, or are you acquiring him to get further under the tax that you're not going to be able to, like, if you waive him, you're not going to be able to replace him either. So like, I don't want to be too harsh on Portland until we see the full array of moves, but I am skeptical that as of this step one, I am skeptical of, and we'll see what happens in step 2 or step 3. But yeah, I'm concerned that nothing is going to meaningfully change for this team, and that, you know, we're going to go through the same BS next summer of like Dame flirting with wanting out, but he's not actually going to ask out. It's like, dude, you chose this. Yeah. The writing was on the wall. It's been on the wall for at least a year now. Like, I mean, the same thing's going to happen to Beal. If he resigns in Washington with that Supermax, like, I don't feel bad for you anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and that Supermax, at some point, you and I are going to have like an entire podcast dedicated to just talking about how guys on the wrong side of 30 signing those major deals have become such a problem in the NBA. I mean, look, James Harden is going to be in it as well. That's why part of why I feel as though that I do. That's why I came in and was slightly aggressive at the top of the show. Just to round out CJ and the Pelicans rumors, which have been widely reported. You know, the return there, I think you raised a really good point, because the big haul there, if you're looking at their youngsters, that's Herb Jones. They're not giving up Herb Jones. I can't imagine they'd be willing to give up Herb Jones. Okay, so who's the next most attractive? Well, that's Kyra Lewis, if you're looking at players of tomorrow. Does he fit there when they have an Anthony Simons all of a sudden? Not really. And if they're trying to hang on to Dame, that also doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
So where is the value here in terms of what New Orleans could give up?
I think it's Sato, Josh Hart, and Jackson Hayes. Like, and then they have picks from the Lakers, which again, I would take Lakers picks to bet against.
Yeah, I would too. But do you think those are getting offered for CJ? I hope so.
Yeah.
See, that would be one of those things where I could get behind the thinking, because it's draft picks. I just made that argument before.
Yeah.
Like, if there are draft picks associated, I don't even care what kind of contracts you're getting. Give me the picks. But are those even in play?
I mean, maybe because New Orleans is so desperate to appease Zion. Like, the trade deadline is always just a fun game of chess of like, who is the most desperate?
Right.
Like, and Portland is no longer desperate to get on the tax. New Orleans is desperate to appease Zion. So maybe they're saying, you know, we look down the road and like, damn, that, you know, that they have the 2024 Lakers pick that they can defer to 2025. Like, that could be a really good pick, because Russ is going to have expired by then. LeBron will be playing with Bronny Jr. somewhere, whether it's in LA or elsewhere.
It's elsewhere. I guarantee you it's elsewhere.
Probably, but I mean, maybe not. Maybe, well, I guess we'll see if he's a draft pick at all.
Look, let's just take a minute on this. That's the thing. Teams are going to go out of their way to draft him just to get LeBron.
Yeah,
like, even if
probably true. Yeah,
even if Bronny isn't a guy who you would want on your team, like, maybe he's projected as a second rounder, I'm not going to put it past an NBA team to pick him first solely because they get LeBron James.
A 40-year-old LeBron James for like
doesn't
1
matter.
year.
Like, if it's like Indiana, could you imagine like one of those teams, like a very small market team that just needs to have something?
Oh God, it's going to be Washington, isn't it?
Oh, it could be. It could be because LeBron is going to come on a min. Like, if he is not going to stay. He's not going to demand a max to come play with his son. Like, if that team is maxed out and they draft Bronny, LeBron is going to be I'll take whatever you can give me just so I can play with my son, because I'm going to be retiring next year.
I was just thinking it's like the GOAT retirement home is the Washington Wizards. We can have MJ's retirement tour there, LeBron's retirement tour. Yeah.
Yeah. Russ.
I said, I guess it could be implied multiple ways if we're including Russell Westbrook there. Let's look at this trade from the Clippers side now, Mort. This bumps their tax bill up from $94 million to $112 million.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, like this is the biggest advantage in the NBA. If you have an owner who is richer than God, as Steve Ballmer is, and is willing to spend $100+ million in luxury tax to make your team better in a season where Paul George and Kawhi Leonard might not return this year. Like this might do nothing for them in terms of increasing their title odds this year. But again, Norman Powell signed for 4 more years, and they just got bird rights for Robert Covington, and they gave up
re-sign
very little.
Yeah, love it. Look, you said you wanted to give this trade and not an F minus, but an incomplete. I feel pretty confident in grading this for the Clippers already.
Oh yeah.
This is an A. This is a clear A. I mean, they get so much better, deeper, immediately so. I mean, next year you can field so many different and weird lineups like Kawhi, Paul George, Powell, Marcus Morris at center if you wanted to. You can throw Robert Covington in there. Like they lean fully in on the wing thing.
Yeah.
Like when you really think about it, because Norman Powell, he probably slot in as more of a 2 guard, but this is a guy who's played the 3 for multiple seasons. So they are just so well rounded, man. Like he's a good defender. Robert Covington, obviously a good defender. PG and Kawhi, elite defenders. Marcus Morris has his moments as well. Like they are going to focus on 2-way production from the wing depth. And that's how you win in this league. I mean, the Clippers next year, I wouldn't be shocked if FanDuel starts them off as having like some of the best odds to win the championship.
Yeah.
If they're healthy.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah.
I don't see the argument against them. I mean, hell, if Kawhi and Paul George come back this year at some point, which doesn't sound likely again, but if they do, like the Clippers could be the sleeper 7 or 8 seed that turns into a legit title threat overnight. Like I think this trade so meaningfully improved their ceiling that I'm just flabbergasted that Portland let them get away with it. Because if you're Portland, you were competing with the Los Angeles Clippers to win a title. Like if your whole pitch of keeping Dame around is, don't worry, Dame, we're going to build a championship contender around you. You just made one of your rivals so much better.
Yeah.
Like you made your goal of building a title contender around Dame that much more unlikely because you just gifted regardless of what happens with Covington, you just gifted Norman Powell, who's going to be a mainstay of that rotation for the next almost half decade.
Yeah. Yep. That's a really good point. Another reason why I don't like it for Portland at all.
Yeah.